A warm welcome to ME Support's 12th Annual General Meeting. Quorum is present, so I'll declare the meeting open at 11:02 a.m. by my clock. I want to kick off with a little bit of background. I'd like to build a bit of a picture about who we are and what our charity does. So ME Support exists to help people affected by ME CFS and long COVID to live their best possible lives. Our charity employs 2 client service coordinators, that's Natalie and Dawn, who dedicate around 50 hours a week to supporting Aucklanders affected by these illnesses. Our client support coordinators do a range of things for our Auckland-based members, such as convening support groups to foster connections and alleviate isolation, advocating for the needs of our members, such as at doctors, WINS, and Housing New Zealand, coaching on illness management, coordinating meal deliveries provided by ME Respite, and ultimately just being a voice at the end of a phone just to validate what you're going through, offer emotional support if you need a listening ear. So outside of Auckland, we provide digital resources rather than direct support. We have things such as our quarterly newsletter, online guest speakers, and many of you will be familiar with our Facebook online support group. But at the end of the day, look, living with ME CFS and long COVID is hard. People with these illnesses are often stigmatized, isolated, and can be incapacitated by the illness. Ultimately, ME Support exists to make your life better. We're here to validate what you're going through, to passionately represent you. And in a world that doesn't always believe or understand these illnesses, we're here to be a place of refuge and support. Vanessa Atkinson, who we fondly call Ness, she leads our operations team, and she's supported by an administrator, Michelle, 2 fundraisers, and a clinical supervisor for our client support coordinators. So in total, we're a team of 7 paid staff and contractors, and that team is supported by a much larger team, including our boards and community volunteers, who are all unpaid. So we do all this on an annual budget around $200,000 a year, which is mostly funded by community grants. And today we offer all our services free of charge to the community. For those who'd like to learn a bit more about our charity, hang around until the end of the meeting and I'll be delighted to answer your questions. But for now, I'll talk a little bit about our agenda today. We're a type of charity called an incorporated society, and as an incorporated society, we must hold an annual meeting. The meeting gives our members a chance to vote on the governance of ME Support and have their voice over a charity's direction. So voting is at the heart of a meeting, and we'll be doing this shortly. We also use the meeting as an opportunity to tell the community what we've been doing to help people affected by ME CFS and long COVID. And Ness will talk about this shortly after me. And we also invite a guest speaker, and I'm absolutely delighted to have our very own Dr. Mona Jeffries and her colleague Kahurangi Day here to talk about their research into food insecurity for people with ME CFS and long COVID, and their work on a proposed ME CFS registry, which I'm really excited about. So that's the agenda for today. Mostly concludes my president's address, but before handing over to Ness, I'd first like to address a couple of elephants in the room. First up, many of you will be aware of a recent controversy surrounding brain retraining. So specifically, whether we permit discussion of topics such as the lightning process, Toni Morrison's program, and similar programs on our Facebook page and our support groups. I'd like to start off by acknowledging that the way our charity managed this issue wasn't good enough. Our responses to member concerns took far too long, moderation was not balanced, and the discussions caused harm to people in our community. For these things, I do sincerely apologize, and as president, I take responsibility. We've been working hard to address the issue, so we've implemented a clear statement outlining our position on brain retraining programs. And although the statement won't satisfy everyone, I'm confident it was our best effort at making something that's clear, fair, pragmatic. And we did the best that we can on that one. We've also introduced a comprehensive policy for managing conflicts of interest, and we have an up-to-date conflict register. So there's always room for further improvements, and currently we're exploring some options to better communicate with our members and ensure their voices are heard. So stay tuned, you'll probably hear more about what's coming in this space. Excuse me, just recovering from a virus, I'll be done soon. Secondly, the law governing our charity has changed, which means our constitution also has to change. So we've circulated a draft constitution which we hope to adopt at today's AGM. I'll provide a summary of the differences between the new constitution and the old one, and an opportunity for everybody to ask questions before we vote to adopt it. So that's all for my address for now. I'll hand over to Ness to talk about what ME Support has been doing for the last year.
Thanks very much, Patrick. And can everybody hear me? We can get. I've got a thumbs up from Patrick. Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes. I'm going to say, unless I get a barrage of messages in the chat. Welcome everybody. This is exciting to have another AGM. It's been a big year, a tumultuous year, as Patrick has also referenced, but it's also been another year in which ME Support has just continued to grow. Demand for our services just goes up and up. Every year it increases, and it seems to increase faster every time I do one of these presentations. The last financial year we grew almost 15% in terms of our membership base, up to 1,422 members at the end of the financial year. And we offered support at over 1,800 times over that period. It's been a year of change and growth. So one of the new initiatives that we've launched is the new North Shore Support Group, which we started as a trial social group, and it was received really well. And in response to requests from members, we've turned that into a permanent support group. And we're also expanding some of our other community support initiatives. Our Facebook group, has continued to go from strength to strength. We're now at over 1,900 members, so it increased about 500 people over the last 12 months. And for those of you who are not part of that Facebook community, it's really a space where people can provide peer support, share information, and provide emotional support. And it's one of the really valued services and offerings that ME Support provides. Over the last year as well, as I said, we have been growing our capacity. We welcomed Dawn Lodge Osborne onto the team. Many of you will already know her from her running of the West Support Group, but she joined our team in November as a client support assistant and has been working directly with members and supporting Natalie, as well as supporting the board. So she's been a very welcome addition to our team, and is obviously spread across a number of tasks and support mechanisms as well. We're continuing to roll out and make improvements and changes to the way we operate. I mentioned this at the AGM last year, and some of this is quite internal. So some of those things you will see as members and experience, and some of them are more internal processes, which while they might not seem terribly exciting, are kind of really important for us to improve the efficiency of our operating, and to ensure that we can direct as much of our limited resources to the front line and to supporting our members. So some of those things have included improving the way we capture and record our data to reduce our administrative burden, so we can direct more resources to the front line. We're starting to adopt some new and emerging tools, again, to improve our efficiency, and we're looking to trial some further tools to further make sure that we're doing things as best and as fast as we can with the resources that we have available to us. We're also looking at continuing to make changes and improve to the way our Facebook group, is run and managed. So there's some of the key changes. I guess I wanted to take this opportunity to try to translate some of those numbers and some of the drier stuff that we do internally, and some of the stats into some real stories. So I just wanted to share with you really a very recent story from one of our members. It's literally just come in the last couple of days, and I want to share this with you just to give you a sense and a flavour of some of the work that we do and some of the impact that we can have on people's lives. So one of our one of our members, she was very unwell with ME, really struggling on a number of levels, including on being in a difficult financial situation. This client wanted to move onto a benefit, but was just so overwhelmed and found the thought of trying to struggle with MSD beyond the capability that had within the restrictions of having ME and a chronic illness. So last year, our client support coordinator, Natalie, worked very slowly and patiently and sensitively with this client to help guide them through the process to get them onto a job seeker, and provide a lot of emotional support during that process. And then after now being on that for a year, is now starting to be able to be ready to move on to trying to get this client onto a supported living payment. And the client is only now really just in a situation where they're feeling ready and supported enough to be able to do this. And the reason I flag this is, I guess this is a point of difference that ME support offers. An advocate benefit, advocate wouldn't be able to offer this level of support, this level of sensitivity, this level of understanding about what it is to live with chronic illness, and the amount of time that is needed to support a client in that situation through what can be a very difficult administrative process with MSD. So I just wanted to read out to you, in their own words, something that this client has shared with them. So I'll do that now. So this client has said, "I'm normally a very strong person, but at that time I was in a muddle about the prospect of filling out the required forms and having to appear alone at the Ministry of Social Development. Natalie was kind, compassionate and patient, slowly talking me through the procedure, what to write on the forms and what to expect at the interview, working through things stage by stage. It was like she held her hand out to help me. Her calm manner kept me calm. Natalie gave very good advice, openly and honestly. She took it one step at a time, making the process bearable. Natalie explained to me what I was entitled to while on the benefit, and by the time we'd finished, I felt more confident about what I had to face." So that just gives you a sense of what we can do. And obviously this is a very resource intensive level of support that we would love to offer to all of our clients, but we're not resourced in a way that we can offer this to everybody, but where we can to our highest needs client, where we feel they're in the best position to have a really positive outcome, we do have a selective advocacy program where people can apply and we are able to offer this service. And this is really unique. This isn't something that other services provide. It is a point of difference. And I guess I just wanted to give you a sense of some of the impact that we have had over the last year amongst our community. I won't keep you much longer. Before I go, I know that Patrick has already given some shout outs, but I really just wanted to acknowledge our operations team. We are small. Those of us who are employed do work all part-time. Just a big shout out to Natalie and to Dawn and to Michelle. Some of you may interact with them, some of you may not, but they all just give their heart and soul into this organisation and give 110% every day, and they have real heart for the work that they do, and the organisation just wouldn't be what it is, and we wouldn't be delivering the services that we are without them. And also we have a big group of volunteers, both official and unofficial, who just keep this organisation going. Patrick has already mentioned the board, who do a lot of out-of-sight work that is absolutely fundamental to this organisation existing. A lot of it's not glamorous, but it is absolutely essential. They do an amazing job. And we have a whole bunch of other volunteers who support with the delivery of some of our services, including support groups, who help with the Facebook page, who provide advice and input into some of our other service deliveries, who provide IT support. So just a huge shout out to our volunteers, Anne, Christine, Barb, Jess, Russell, and now Raymond as well, coming in as our IT volunteer and all the other people who also assist in an unofficial capacity. We just couldn't do what we do without the huge number of volunteer hours that go into delivering this service. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Ness, and second everything you say, and also a shout out to you. I mean, you're the leader of the operations team and the glue that holds us all together. And you know, you say it's a part-time job, but I suspect for you it's sometimes closer to full-time than it is to part-time on your own accord. So and a huge thanks to you. I know board's always saying how impressed they are with your professionalism and the caliber of and quality you bring to the organisation. You know, here's to another year of more achievements and more people helped. So thank you. That brings us to the formal parts of the meeting. So this will be the resolutions and voting. So how this works is that I put forward a motion, I say I move that we do X. Somebody comes and says, yes, I second that motion, they agree with it. And then after that, we all vote. So you have a little thing popped up on your screen saying I vote for or I vote against. Excuse me. I ask you please only vote if you're a member of ME Support. So if you're just coming along for the talk, but you're not a member, then just hold off the voting. We've called for proxy votes, so people who aren't here today who wanted to cast their votes, and we've received some. These will take some time to process and count, but Michelle will do this while our guest speaker is talking. So we'll only be able to confirm the outcomes of the votes after Mona's talk. Excitingly, we've received 2 nominations for directors. So through the AGM process, people can nominate others who I think would be a good addition to ME Support Board. I think this is the first time in our history we've had nominations. So before we cast a vote on whether to appoint our new nominees as directors, I'm going to give each a couple of minutes just to introduce himself and talk a little bit about what they'd like to bring to the charity, and that way you're in a position to vote for their appointments. All the documents are relevant to a voting, minutes, performance report, constitutions, all been circulated ahead of a meeting, so I'm going to take those as read. So let's kick off with the motions. Are you all ready, Michelle, on your end?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. Quick response. The first motion is that the minutes of last year's annual general meeting, held 16th of November 2024, be adopted as a true and correct record of that meeting. So do I have a second for that motion? Anybody would put their hand up or unmute the mic? Yes. Who was that? For yes.
That was Anne.
Was that? Oh, fantastic. Oh, it's my own mother. I should have recognized the voice. Anyway,
That's
so I've got a
okay.
second. Dawn, for minutes, you have to record the person who's doing the seconding. So wait, if you can take the name down. The voting should pop up on the screen now. Is that something we can do, Michelle? Yeah. It should be on a screen and just vote yes or no. Michelle, I think you can see the votes trickle in. Maybe you let me know when you want me to move on to the next one.
Okay, yeah, they're still coming in.
Cool.
And it seems to have stopped. Okay, I will end that one.
Fantastic. The second motion is an audited performance report of ME CFS Support, Auckland Incorporated, for the year ended 30th of June 2025, be received and adopted. Do I have a second for that motion? Perhaps someone from the team. Andrew Perry, it looks like he's got his hand up, so I'll take Andrew Perry as our second. And a voting should come up, so all in favour, all against. While they're rolling in, the next motion is to adopt our constitution. Ask that you hold off voting until we've had a little bit of discussion on this one. So, as mentioned earlier, we've rewritten our constitution to be compliant with the new Incorporated Societies Act. Basically, if we don't change our constitution and if we don't re-register our charity under the new act, then ME Support will cease to exist in around April next year. So this is a necessary order of business. Our approach when changing the constitution was to keep it as much the same as the old constitution and preserve voice and rights of our members. So any member rights and voting rights and things kept in there. The changes are pretty innocuous in my view. I don't think there's anything too big here, but for sake of transparency, I'll list the 5 main areas of change. Number 1, we're breaking our membership down into 2 different tiers, so a voting and a non-voting member. What this does is it recognizes that most people join our charity ME support because they want the services and want access to support groups, the advocacy, that sort of stuff, but not really to get involved in the charity's affairs and be there and voting and talking at meetings and stuff like that. So what we've done is we've made the non-voting tier, so the one where we just access the services, a bit more accessible. So as soon as you fill out our membership form, you can access our services. You don't need to be approved membership like you would under our old constitution. The voting tier of membership is the same, so there's no cost to vote or anything like that. You just fill out another application form and then you're able to vote. For the second area of changes, streamlining board meetings. So for new constitutions, there's a quorum for a board meeting as half of a board rather than 4. We find by setting a minimum number for a quorum that can bias against recruitment of people with ME and long COVID to a board, because these people often can't make board meetings due to illness and relapse. So instead of specifying a minimum number, we say half a board is required as a quorum. We've done some stuff around clarifying grounds for removal from a board and how many terms that directors can serve, and also given some flexibility to hold meetings as needed rather than periodically. And a requirement for the majority of board members are also members of charity too. Number 3 is annual general meetings and special general meetings. So we've added extra transparency to annual general meetings like this one, such as presenting financial reports and reporting conflicts as requirements. Special general meetings can now be called by members, so if 10% of our membership wants a special general meeting, they can call it. Some minor timing changes, so things like nominations need to be received 5 days before AGM, and also AGM can be held within 6 months of financial year ends, or up in just 5 months, and they're mainly just practical things. We also instituted, as number 4, a higher threshold for liquidating a society or changing the constitution. So under our previous constitution, this will require 50% vote or a slight majority. Under the new one, it'll need a special resolution or 2/3 of vote. So, liquidating our society, changing constitution, both 2 very important things, which you probably would want to do with a bit more than a simple majority. And other practical stuff, we got rid of a requirement for a common seal. It's very old and outdated, and done some stuff around the timing of having to bank donations. So that's a summary of changes. I'm sorry if it was very dry and boring, but we do this for the sake of transparency, so you know what you're voting on. Does anybody have any questions on the constitution and the changes that I've just outlined? If not, then we'll take it to a resolution to a vote. Okay, 7-second rule. Sounds like all is fine. So I'll put forward a motion that the amended constitution of ME CFS Support Auckland Incorporated be received and adopted. And I'll also add to that it'll be effective after this board meeting. So this board meeting will be bound by the old constitution and a new one will be adopted afterwards. Will we get new membership forms sent to us? Yep, if you want to register as a voting member, then totally happy to send it out to you. But otherwise, there's no need to re-register to maintain as a non-voting member. So if you're someone who accesses our services, you don't need to fill out another form, thankfully, to keep accessing the services. If you're on our books now, then you're fine. Do I have a second on that motion? Second, Andrew Perry again. Thank you, Andrew. And the voting should come up. So yes and no. And remember, keeping in mind the motion of our constitution to be effective from after this board meeting, after this AGM. Okay, and if enough votes are rolled in, Michelle, then we can move on.
Yep.
Yeah. And Russell, just to answer your question in the chat about performance reports or breakdown of spending under consulting and accounting, it's just going to be our Xero subscription and possibly our auditor as well. We have a mandatory audit that we're going to get done. But I can provide further information after the meeting if you like. Motion number 4 that membership fees. I move that membership fees be maintained at $0, i.e. free for the next 12 months. Do I have a second? Daniel Freeman, thank you very much. And the voting, all in favour and all against. Okay, now we'll move on to the reappointment of our directors. Michelle, if I'm not running ahead, I move that Dr. Mona Jeffries be reappointed as a director of ME Support. And just a reminder to everybody that our constitution requires that we're re-elected every AGM, so you have a chance to vote for or against the current board. So do I have a second on Dr. Mona Jeffries being reappointed? Also our guest speaker today, Natalie seconds. So bring up poll. And while it's running, I move that Steve Schroeder be reappointed as Director of ME Support. Do I have a second on that? Daniel seconds. Yep. And the voting might pop up shortly. And continuing on, I move that Kelly Broadbent be reappointed as Director of ME Support. Do I have a second? Jason, thank you very much. And voting should pop up. And finally, in reappointments, is my own reappointment. I'll be restanding for the chair of ME Support. I probably shouldn't move this, so can I have somebody to move that I'm reappointed as the chairman of ME Support? Jason, thank you very much. And could I have somebody to second that I'm reappointed as the chair? Daniel, I think, got in first, so thank you very much, Daniel. And to a voting, all in favour, all against. I'll vote yes. So that brings us on to our nominees. So we've had 2 people be nominated to be new directors of ME Support, Russell Jones and Marie Candish, both through existing volunteers for ME Support. So Russell, if you're ready, I can give you a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about yourself and what you'd like to contribute to a charity.
I'm Russell Jones. Can you see and hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear, thanks.
Yes.
Okay, good, because I can't, I'm used to getting a little pop-up of myself and these sorts of conference type software. Okay, so I've had mild ME/CFS for more than 20 years and have worked as a volunteer for ME Support since 2019, so 6 years, and in that time I've helped organise the East Auckland and later the Central Auckland support group. So it's given me a good understanding of the community that we serve. My professional background is in analytical work for transport and urban planning. I've been self-employed for more than 20 years. That came about because of the ME/CFS. I basically couldn't work full-time and the sort of restrictions that my employer at that time put on me. They had all the right words, but when it came to doing things, they weren't interested. So I certainly have sympathy for people who are able to work a bit, but not where there's limitations, which applies to many of us. So my work career has given me a range of skills which I can bring to the board, and I'd like to help ME Support move forward and provide more services to the membership. Patrick.
Cool, thank you, Russell. Well within a couple of minutes. On a basis, I move that Russell be appointed as the Director of ME Support. Do I have a second? Kelly. So Kelly got there first, followed by Natalie and Jason. Quite a few there, Russell. And the voting should pop up shortly. Fantastic. And while the voting is running, Marie, would you like to give a little bit of a talk about yourself and what you'd like to bring?
Kia ora koutou. I'm hoping that my internet connection is stable. I'm not at home, but fingers crossed. I've had ME/CFS for about 12 years now, and unusually my two children got it at the same time. So it really was quite a shock to the system to find out how little support there was. I expect, like a lot of you sort of start reading everything, and eventually you realize that there's quite a lot of misinformation out there. So about 8 years ago, I helped set up an international forum for advocates, doctors, researchers, to try and work out what is true and what isn't. That's the Science for ME forum. And I'm on that pretty much every day, interacting with people, and we're analyzing research. Patrick was very kind to say that I'm an ME support volunteer. Actually, I've only put together one report and a few comments for Patrick so far. So I'll say a little bit more than Russell did about me, because perhaps many of you haven't come across me before. As part of the International Forum, I helped run a campaign where we had about 80 ME/CFS and long COVID groups coordinating. I think that might be something I can bring to ME support, is the sort of international connections and knowing what's worked overseas and what hasn't. I've contributed to the New Zealand guidelines on ME/CFS, such that I've been on a Australian government panel allocating millions of dollars for research funding for ME/CFS. Before I got ME/CFS, I was a consultant in forestry, of all things, and climate change. I've run international teams, advised companies on management systems and the like. For about 5 years now, I've been on NEAC, which is the New Zealand Government Advisory Committee to the Ministry of Health and the Minister of Health on ethics in healthcare and health research. Why ME support? I'm so impressed with this organization. I'm impressed with the board and the staff. I really like the direction it's heading. And so I would really like to help if I can. One other thing, I'm based in Christchurch, so perhaps I can bring a perspective of how people in the South Island can be supported, and that makes things like the website and the content of the website really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And being humble and saying you're not a volunteer for us. The report you wrote was about 20 pages from memory, so was with a lot of international consultation. It was a real monumental undertaking. So I move that Marie Kentish be appointed as Director of ME Support. Do I have a second? Second, Kelly. Followed by Daniel, and the voting should come up now. Great, so thank you all for bearing with the formal part of the meeting. As mentioned, we need to count some proxy votes and tally it all up. So Michelle will inform us of the results, whether all the motions passed after our guest speaker talks. Just very quickly before we go into our guest speaker, and I'm sure you guys are hanging out for that rather than listening to me. You know, while it's great to reappoint much of a team at AGM and to reappoint appoint our new nominees, it's also a time we need to acknowledge our outgoing directors, directors who haven't stood for re-election. First, I'd like to acknowledge Lisa Ryan. I've really appreciated Lisa's curious and questioning mind, her positive outlook, and the strong connection she's brought to the long COVID community. I would have loved to have worked alongside Lisa for longer, but the team and I are so grateful for the time that we've had with her. We wish Lisa all the best as she focuses on her health and settles into a new home. Next is John Loof. I've often said we were incredibly lucky the day we found John, and 4.5 years later, I still feel the exact same way. John brought tremendous leadership experience, including 20 years at the helm as CEO of Cancer Society. So I've leaned on John for wise and invaluable advice, the type that's really impossible to find elsewhere. And John has helped guide the charity through some of those most important decisions. John would jokingly call himself our consigliere, which is a nod to the trusted advisor and the Godfather. I'm not sure if you've seen those movies, but unlike that story, John's counsel has always come from a place of integrity and care. Many of John's experience might arrive at a small charity and starts telling everybody what to do, but John did the opposite. He listened, he learned, and he sought to truly understand the community he served before offering his advice. John's really deep experience is only matched by his endless patience, his sharp logic, and his commitment to making fair decisions. I'm deeply grateful for John's service and leadership. I'll miss it a lot. He'll be greatly missed by the team also, and we wish John every success as he takes on his new challenge, leading Assistance Dogs New Zealand Trust. And finally, last but not least, definitely not least, we farewell Kate. Kate is our longest serving board member beside myself, having just completed an impressive 5.5-year tenure. Kate's dedication to our charity has been second to none. So there's a lot I could say, but too much to list in a time. But ultimately, Kate was a driving force behind our long COVID video series. This was a mammoth project that helped put our small charity on the map. Kate's advice has always been highly valued by the operations team. I know they've always depended on her, and she's brought a unique perspective coming from background in not-for-profit development and also in the healthcare sector. Our discussions over years have been robust, but one thing everybody can agree on is that this charity probably wouldn't be alive today without Kate's contribution, especially her support through the early years and the challenging times. I'm not sure we'd be around if it wasn't for Kate. So words can never really truly honour such an immense contribution. Kate, thank you for all you've done for any support. We'll be arranging some send-offs and sending some tokens of our appreciation as well shortly. So with that, I'll hand over to Michelle to introduce our guest speakers.
Kia ora, everybody. Just bear with me while I'm also doing some controlling of bits and pieces behind the scenes for the meeting. We have the privilege of Dr. Mona Jeffries and her colleague Kahurangi Day going to present to us today their research. They collaborate together. They are both with, just excuse my pronunciation, Te Ringa Waka, Victoria University of Wellington. Dr. Mona Jeffries is an associate professor in research and epidemiology, and Kahu is a PhD candidate and research fellow in Te Kura Tatai Hahora, which is the School of Health at Victoria University, Te Ringa Waka. So I think I will leave it at that and let them introduce themselves a little bit better than I can do and the topic of their talk. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation to speak. Kahu, do you want to introduce yourself first, and then I'll introduce myself and start the presentation.
Thanks, Mona. Thanks, everyone. Kia ora tātou. He uri ahau no Ngāti Pukenga, no Ngāti Rangi. My whānau is from the Tauranga region, and I live in Wellington and work with Mona. Very privileged to work with Mona at Te Ringa Waka. I'm a research fellow with an interest in food security, and Mona and I have shared an office for a few years, and Mona's a numbers person, and you'll appreciate that when she goes through this presentation. She's got a beautiful way of just translating very complex content into relatable, understandable information. And so I've been really privileged to share an office with Mona and yeah, plot research projects and try and figure out how to solve answer some really interesting questions. And so that's what we have in this project, wanting to explore the food security experiences of people with ME, CFS and long COVID. So that's probably it. And I am not a person with lived experience of either of those, but yeah, so that's me, kia ora, and I'll hand over to Mona.
Oh, kia ora kahu, and it is indeed, it's a privilege to work with kahu. I have learned so much about the importance of studying food security from working with you, and it's been super. So yeah, I'm Mona. I'm an epidemiologist. As you can hear from my accent, I don't come from Aotearoa, but I moved here about 22 years ago. I got ME about 11 years ago and was housebound for about the first 4. Since then, and then made quite an improvement to be able to work again, which was been a big milestone for me. Be able to work and be able to do pretty much all I need to do for my kids. Who the littlest one was 3 when I got ill, so she doesn't remember a time before I was ill, and so it's really important for me to be able to do what she needs, and yeah, and for the others too. So yeah, a real privilege to be able to work, and I think about just over a year ago, when I saw a vacancy on the board of ME Support, then I reached out to Kate, who we'd had dealings with before, who encouraged me to apply, and it's been a huge learning curve for me. I've learned a lot from watching what happens at the board level, and also beginning to understand a bit more what happens at the operational level, and it's a charity that I'm hugely grateful for, and delighted that I can support in a small way. So I'm going to share my screen to present some results to you. So hopefully you'll all be able to see that. So let me know if there's anything you can't, if you can't see, but hopefully that's good. So we are coming to the end of this project. The analysis isn't quite finished, but we are, yeah, it's getting there. It's pretty much done. So we're going to present to you what we've got so far. What we haven't got is the Māori, non-Māori analysis, which is what's coming next. So we haven't got anything particularly about ethnic specific results for you today, but that will be in the final report when we get there. So obviously this sort of work isn't done in isolation by any means. Kahu and I worked together, but we were also supported by 3 very able research assistants. Some of you may recognise these names. Josie, many of you will know, is somebody with lived experience of long COVID, and she was really instrumental in helping us design the study, and also in the analysis, particularly of the text responses, which I'll share with you alongside the numbers. Tyler was a student who came to us looking for a project about Hauora Māori, and has done some really good analysis of the Māori data, but it's not quite finished yet. So like I said, I won't be presenting that to you. And my daughter Isabel is a student as well, and she has been really helpful writing up some of the results into a paper that we're preparing for publication. Obviously, a huge thanks to our participants. Many of your names from around the screen, although it was an anonymous survey, that I know many of you around the screen, but not all, and I suspect that a lot of you have had input to our work, not only this, but other projects too. And I know how much of a toll that can take, and for that I'm extremely grateful that you can share some of your limited energy to try to make the research move forward. So many thanks. And clearly this type of work also needs funding, because our salaries need to be paid, and a huge thanks to ANSMES for funding this project. So when we started out, then we thought what we were interested in was how common food insecurity is. Now, food insecurity is measured typically in New Zealand using 8 questions. The first 6 of those relate to the cost of accessing food. And the last 2 relate to the stress of not being able to afford food. So the whole idea of food insecurity is about cost, which clearly is extremely important. But when we designed our survey and sent it out we piloted it, so we tried it with people with lived experience of either ME or long COVID, then we found that affordability was important, but really only one aspect. And there was a lot of other things that people identified as things that we should include in the final version of our survey. Nutrition came across as really important, not being able to access nutritious food and not being able to prepare food. So although some people were able to afford the food they wanted, then having the energy or the ability to prepare that food, as I don't need to tell you, those of you around the screen with lived experiences is a huge issue. So coping with those challenges while coping with a chronic illness is obviously a big challenge. And so I think that as we go through the results, then you'll see some of these things that came up and we've been able to ask and provide some evidence about. So it was an online survey. It was fully anonymous and was available for a few months over the sort of autumn winter of this year. There was just over 400 people started the survey, but 334 people provided at least some results. Not everybody finished. I think the difference between those who started and those who didn't were people who started and then tried to restart again, possibly from a different device, so Qualtrics didn't recognize it was the same person. So the data I'm going to present to you are based on 334 people. Almost all had ME with or without long COVID, although there were 12% of people who had long COVID but didn't identify as having ME CFS. And when I say identify as, that's people who either had were diagnosed or had been diagnosed by a health professional and or self-identified as having one of these conditions. I was really pleased that we had a range of severities. Well, that sounds really wrong, doesn't it? Of course, I'm not pleased that we have a range of severities, but I was concerned that we would only get respondents from people who were mildly ill and that would skew our results. But as you can see from that pie chart down there, then about a third have got mild ME, but we had more than half of people who have moderate ME as well. And a really significant number of our respondents has severe or very severe ME. So this was really encouraging for us. And again, we are hugely thankful, particularly for those at the severe end, for using up that limited energy that you've got to be able to answer our questions. Because it means that the results we get are much more representative of the whole spectrum of illness. Most of the respondents were female, which is, as we all know, entirely representative of the patient group. Most were European or New Zealand European, so 83% with 6% Māori. So we were a little disappointed that we didn't get more Māori. We did do a big push out through Māori providers, and that boosted the numbers of Māori. But then there was another big push through the Royal College of GPs, and that sort of boosted the European numbers. So the percentage of Māori went down from about 12% to 6%, but obviously the numbers didn't. So we will be able to hopefully have some useful interpretation of the Māori data when we get to that analysis. Pretty shockingly, half of everybody who responded had experienced cost-related food insecurity in the past 12 months. So these are those 6 questions that are typically used by the Ministry of Health to define food insecurity. So there are people are asked about whether they often, sometimes, or never in the last 12 months are able to eat. The first question is coded as being able to afford to eat, and all the other questions are coded as the sort of the negative, the having food run out because of cost, eating less because of cost, eating a lower variety of food because of cost, relying on others to either buy food or provide money to buy food, again, because to provide food because cost is a barrier, and using either special food grants or food banks because people don't have enough money to buy food. So answering yes to any one of those, half of people did. Again, it was really important for us to try to understand whether that differed or how it differed by severity. And I think this pattern, when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, well, we'll look at mild and moderate together, and we'll look at severe and very severe together. But then we looked at it in a bit more detail and realized that the pattern for people with very severe illness when it comes to food affordability is a bit different. And I think that's because we understand that many people might either be tube fed or be being provided with nutrition supplements that are potentially paid for by the health service. But when we look at the first 3 bars going from mild to moderate to severe, the more severe your illness, then the more likely you are to experience food insecurity because of cost. And looking at that severe bar, that's up at almost 60% of people with severe ME answer yes to one of those questions, that they sometimes or always face one of those cost barriers to getting food. So then looking at each of those 6 bars individually, so the blue bar is that I often face this barrier, and that first one, which, as I said to you, in the question, it's coded as I can afford to eat properly. I've presented here as people who can't afford to eat properly. So the blue bar are the people we are very concerned about, where this is often a problem. The red bar are people that we're also particularly concerned about. This is sometimes a problem. And when we add them together, you can see that for almost each of those barriers or problems that people face in terms of the cost of getting food, then we're up around sort of 50, sometimes over 60%. And even the last bar, which you might think, oh, well, that's the lowest one, we've got nearly 20% of our community who either often or sometimes are relying on food banks or special food grants to get food. And I just look at these numbers and I think, my goodness, what is it's just appalling. Now, we know that there's a cost of living crisis across the country. This isn't only something that is experienced by people with ME/CFS, but it is significantly higher than we know what's happening across the whole population, so not just people with chronic illness. Now, as Kahurangi said at the beginning, I'm a numbers person, and she was determined that we were going to put in free text boxes into our survey, and I was a little bit hesitant. I thought, I'm not sure how useful those are going to be, and they have been extremely illuminating. So people were given the opportunity to type in their own experiences into the survey, and these are just some of the quotes that people told us. Sadly, food is now a luxury item. At times I go without hot water. I turn off the hot water cylinder and the heating so I can afford to eat. I feed my daughter and not me, just so I can afford the things she needs. We asked people what was the worst time they experienced food insecurity. Somebody said when they had $10 a week to feed myself. Someone else saying I was bedbound, unable to shop or cook, unable to even get to the door for food deliveries. So I think these give some context around just how desperate the situation is for many people. So as I said, we were then started becoming more interested after the pilot in not just cost, but also about being able to access nutritious food. So we know that there are fruit and vegetable guidelines at the Ministry of Health Issues. I have to admit, before doing this study, I still thought we were on 5+ a day, but we're not. We're on 2+ servings of fruit a day and 5 or more servings of vegetables a day. Very few people meet those guidelines. So 20% of people meeting the fruit guidelines and about just under 15% meeting the vegetable guidelines. that's always, and the red bar is sometimes. So once you add always and sometimes together, then about 80% of people can meet the fruit guidelines, and just over 70 meeting the vegetable guidelines. But clearly that is significantly lower than we would want it to be. So the guidelines being the optimal nutrition, or people think that is the optimal nutrition amount of fruit, sort of minimum fruit and veg you should be eating. And again, when we look by severity, then we can see this really clear downward pattern across the 4 levels of severity, that the more severe your illness, the harder it is to meet those, both the fruit guidelines and the vegetable guidelines. And again, just to add in some quotes to kind of colour that for you a bit. So one person talked about both themselves and their partner being ill with CFS. We're both on special diets. We can never afford fruit and veg except for some frozen veg. Someone else said, I try not to stress about meeting my nutritional needs. My priority is just to be able to eat. On very bad days, I'm too tired to chew food or to drink, so just eating food is the best I can do right now. Someone else talked about not being able to go to a supermarket in person. It causes too much PEM, so post-exertional malaise, or feeling a bit of a crash. I order everything, almost everything online, barring the occasional help from friends, but I miss fresh fruit and vegetables. We then wanted to try to understand what people were doing to try to afford food, and how they were trying to balance food in relation to other spending. So we asked people how in the last 12 months whether they had reduced spending on other things to be able to afford food, and nearly 70% of people said yes. We then asked if people spent less money on food, so this is the orange bar, so that they could pay for other bills and expenses, because we know things are going up in cost, and nearly 60% of people said yes to that. So clearly it is a balancing between being able to afford food and other often necessary items. And again, when we looked across severity levels, then not so much for the very severe, but across the other 3 bars, and it looked like the more severe somebody's illness is, then the greater the amount of restriction on other things they had to spend. And that was perhaps even more obvious with the spending less on food. So people with severe illness were much more likely to spend less on food because of the having to pay for other things compared to those with mild illness. We wanted to try and understand where people were getting their food from or accessing their food. So we asked about deliveries from supermarkets. So we've called that ingredients deliveries. And about 35% of people are being delivered, so using online shopping, essentially. And we also asked about having prepared food deliveries. So this isn't really takeaways. This is more things like the soups that are provided through ME Respite. And about 20% of people are having deliveries of prepared food. And again, when we looked at that by severity level, then people who have the most severe, so people who have severe, but not very severe. People who have severe illness were most likely to use online shopping, so that's nearly 50% in the blue bar, and about a third of people were having meal deliveries. People with severe illness. A lot of people talked about relying on family. Without the support of broader family or food banks, I would have even more health issues. Family have to provide food and other basic living needs for me, otherwise I couldn't afford to exist. My parents and other family members give me food. One other person was reasonably lucky. If my husband hadn't been able to work and keep a garden and a few sheep, then we would have struggled. There was a lot of people talked about relying on charity. So someone talked about being bed tethered or housebound. I can't access community free meals, food banks or food pantries because none of them deliver. I do get soups and other items when available for West Auckland through ME Respite. This was life-changing. And just an acknowledgement to Wendy and your team who run ME Respite. I hope that you recognise just how important the work that you do is. Someone else talked about having to rely on soups delivered by ME Respite Charity. I was unable to cook meals. I couldn't afford to purchase microwave meals. Someone else talked about relying on food grants, the Salvation Army, friends and family to get food. My CFS was bad enough that cooking was often undoable. And others talked about getting food from the food bank. Other people talked about the coping strategies they used to try to manage. I always buy things that are on special because it's what I can afford, but often the food was off or spoiled, and that would make me ill. Others talked about having had food grants. I limit my heating. I'm often cold as a result. I have considered foraging, but I don't have enough energy. Someone else said that I eat 1 meal a day at most. Other people said they ate mostly baked beans. And someone else said I've considered shoplifting groceries. So things are really desperate for some of our community. And it's not just about the actual cost of food. So the delivery cost is a barrier. When I'm in severe PEM, so having a crash, I'm bedbound, unable to go to supermarkets, the delivery cost is a huge barrier, resulting in having to buy less nutritious food because it's cheaper. Other people are limited by the dietary restrictions that they have, so the not being able to eat certain foods because of their illness. I wish that alternative foods were cheaper. I'm dairy and gluten intolerant as part of my illness, and that can be quite expensive at times. Other people talk about the barrier of medical help and personal help that costs, and so having to pay for that, and then not necessarily having money for food. I feel like I don't count. I've been swept under the rug and forgotten. And for many people, cost is a barrier to improved health. So someone talked about, I can't afford the supplements my doctor recommends. I have a focus on supporting my body to deal with my illness, but as I can't do that anywhere near as well as I used to due to food cost increases not being matched by benefit increases. It would be a privilege to eat as my doctor recommends. And I'm unable to try diets like low histamine my doctor recommends for my illness because of the cost. So this is the idea that people know or feel that they would be able to be in better health if only they could afford some of these foods that they are recommended. We also asked people about specific things that they do or can't do because of the symptoms of ME or long COVID. So a small proportion of people who answered have a feeding tube. About a third of people say they rely on meal replacement bars or shakes. So that we asked this about at times in the last 12 months, so it's not all the time. But again, about more than a third of people saying I'm unable to eat at times. I eat smaller amounts than I would like because of my symptoms. It's about 2/3 of people. A similar number saying that they skip meals because of symptoms. About 3/4 saying I eat a lower quality or a lower variety of food than I would like to, again, because of my symptoms of my illness. And it's not surprising that this does result in huge amounts of stress. So as I talked about at the beginning, there are 2 questions the Ministry of Health tend to use to measure stress-related food insecurity. So the first of these is people who agree with it or agree saying often or sometimes that they feel stressed because of not having enough money for food. That's about 2/3 of people, and slightly more people saying I feel stressed because I can't provide the food I want to for social occasions. But it's more than just stress. When we looked at the respondents that we had in our survey, then people talked about the guilt and the shame and the stigma. I'm unable to afford decent food for the week, but I'll go without meals rather than ask for help. I'm too proud to ask for help from the neighbours, although the lady next door checks on me regularly and sometimes brings a container of soup or a bowl of chips. My family do provide for me, but this leaves me feeling guilty that I can't contribute more, both to the purchasing food and the preparation. There's such a heavy burden of guilt that I carry. So in summary, then, not just the cost, but also the shopping for and the preparation of healthy meals is a significant challenge for people with ME and or long COVID. So these illnesses have a unique combination of barriers to healthy nutrition. I think this work does support the need for ME and long COVID to be identified as a disability, and the role of informal carers to be better recognised. And I think it's really important that GPs recognise and ensure that nutrition is part of the consideration of the care and support of somebody with these illnesses when we think from a holistic point of view. So like I said, we are just finishing up this analysis, and typically with a sort of academic work, we tend to write publications which go to journals, and they very often kind of stay within the journal, or they're read by other people who are interested in the same sort of things as us. But we're much more interested in a wider dissemination. We've had some thoughts about how to engage with policymakers, but are really interested in your thoughts as well. So if anybody has ideas of what you would like us to do, where you'd like us to take this, then we're very, very open to that. So thank you. I'll stop there. Perhaps just open first to Kaharangi in case you've any other anything you want to add, and then yeah, happy to take questions and open to the floor. Thank you.
No, thank you, man. That was amazing. Yes, open to the floor, I'd say.
Lovely. So if anyone's any questions, please feel free to either type in the chat or just speak. Define levels of fatigue. That's a question from Jason. So do you mean about the sort of the mild, moderate, severe, and very severe? So that was I think we had examples in the survey. I think we said, how would you, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was something like, how would you categorize your illness at this time, knowing that this is a fluctuating illness? So I think we define mild as being able to do many things, but limited to some degree. Moderate as being able to, gosh, I can't remember. I'll have to send you the wording. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've got it up, Mona.
Oh, thank you. Do you want to read it out?
Yeah, mild was able to continue with some work, family, or social activity. Moderate was mostly housebound. Severe was mostly bedbound, and very severe was completely bedbound, requires help with basic needs.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, I'll just head down. As a part-time wheelchair user, I find it interesting that there's sort of able to walk, and then you suddenly jump to bedbound. Whereas I had a huge battle with Ministry of Health and then the housing compliance to get a lift installed for my wheelchair. It would have been nice to have a category for how many people have wheelchairs as part-time users, because I can walk to the letterbox, the clothesline on a good day, but I can't on a bad day.
Yeah.
Also, I was deeply touched by the inclusion of the I have considered shoplifting for food category, because I lie awake. I'm living with my widower father right now, and if he were to suddenly die, I do not know where my next meal would come from exactly. So he's literally staved all his working life from when he was in his 20s or late teens, and is now paying to supplement my food in his twilight years. I was very interested to see that you did a pilot, and then that you were sensitive to the community and modified your questions to be more appropriate to the community. I applaud you greatly for doing that sensitivity and that tactfulness. I'd love to see a follow-up study done, not just to do a follow-up study, but to press home to the government and people that this is an ongoing problem. It's not going to go away by doing one survey. And I'm so grateful that you've done such professional research. It's so professional.
Sorry.
As a recipient of the Emmy respite food packages, I'm very, very grateful for Wendy, and I believe it's Phil and the other members of the team. Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work on my behalf and on other members of the community's behalf.
Oh, thank you, Andrew, and thank you for sharing your experiences. And I'm sorry things are so tough for you at the moment. No, I have to be truthful. We didn't consider asking about wheelchair use, and that possibly didn't come up in the pilot, I guess. And so, no, we didn't think enough about that. And really happy to kind of make that part of another piece of work. In terms of follow-up, and I think this sort of tries to also answers the question that Dawn has online about policymakers and agencies we're planning to share this with. So currently our plan is to write, so we will get this published, because having something peer reviewed means that it has a bit more, people tend to believe it a bit more. It's less easy to criticize if it has been published in an academic journal. We're then going to write a policy brief. We have a strong feeling that the current government won't pay a huge amount of attention, and so we were planning not only to send it to current ministers, but also to those in opposition, because we have a great hope that if there is going to be a change of government at the next election, that actually, if this is profiled before we get into that kind of sort of frenetic election time, that if it's on the radar of people like Aisha Verrill, who is the Labour Minister of Health, who herself is a doctor, then it might be a good time now, I think, to try to do that. We have got links with the Royal College of GPs, and they've been very helpful in previous unrelated bits of work, disseminating work directly to GPs. So it may be that they would do something on our behalf, sending that out to all GPs, and we definitely would try to get something published in New Zealand Doctor, which is the kind of magazine that all GPs get. But yeah, very, very, very open to other thoughts as well. So please do keep the ideas coming in. So just reading from Anne-Marie, why are we not eligible for dietitian support? I think it was down to only being able to drink celery juice and eat steamed potatoes for 5.5 months last year. Despite this radical weight loss, I was told I wasn't bad enough. Goodness, I don't know, Anne-Marie. I don't know enough about the criteria for referral, but I'm very happy to look into that. And
I might be able to answer a little bit of that. There's very strict. Sorry, I'm Catherine. I have ME, long COVID, and I work in primary care. But there's very strict requirements for being able to refer for publicly funded dietitians, and it's very tightly worded, and it's very difficult for people with ME to meet that criteria. So. But I think it's really important from your research that it demonstrates that there is a need. I think I would be quite interested to see how many people do have problems with getting adequate nutrition in our community and are underweight. So not just from a food security point of view, but just from an illness point of view. Yeah, sorry. I hope that answered the question a little bit. I think this shows that we need to do a bit more.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And yeah, lovely to see your face, Catherine. I emailed for the first time last week. So yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, so thank you, Marie. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely always wanting to listen and make sure we do, do a pilot and listen to what people have to say. Very, very happy to engage to talk about policy papers, and it'd be great that we'll be working together on the board. So yeah, appreciate that too. Doing a follow-up study with food banks. Now that's really interesting. Yes, I'm not sure if food banks collect that sort of information, so it would have to be something we would implement and collect in it, prospectively. And I don't know if they would be open to doing that. My sense, I haven't worked directly with food banks, but my guess is that they would be wanting to ask as little as possible of their clients. Kaho, I don't know if you've got any experience of working with food banks.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, most have really minimal criteria, so they're just trying to get the minimal information without adding extra stress. But yeah, some do have questionnaires, like for example the Salvation Army, I know was had questionnaires and criteria for their new social supermarkets. So be really hard to do, I think. Yeah. But it might be more possible through something like a similar type of research that we've done. Yeah. Seeking people with ME, CFS and or long COVID who use food banks. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for those ideas, Ness, about comms. Yeah, we definitely will once we. They usually like to get involved once we are ready to, or once we have something about to be published. So they're the comms team at Vic are very useful. Yeah, I think that probably 9 to noon. I think they would be interested. I have spoken before on the Saturday morning program. Gosh, her name's gone out of my head. The Scottish woman who does that Saturday morning. Her dad has got ME. So thanks, Catherine Ryan. Yep. So she was really interested. So it was a while back when I was talking about long COVID. But I think she'd be very keen to talk again. She seemed really interested at the time. So yeah, that is a really good idea. Thank you. Jason asks, is there any work with MSD in terms of getting data on the level of support of MECFS, including food grants? Sorry, I don't know what TAS is. I don't know, and I do think, very often when we talk about policy papers, we talk about going to the Ministry of Health, but I think that going to MSD is particularly important. Oh, thank you, Kelly and Daniel. So we definitely will be engaging with other ministries as well. I mean, clearly MSD is going to be the most important. Yeah.
Yeah, in the kind of food security work I've done, there's minimal data around food grants. Yeah, so I think, Mona, that's what we've been talking about, isn't it? That it's kind of highlighted that there is a need for support that's not currently there. Yeah, so that yeah, and you've talked about the advocacy for supported living, was it? Or
yeah, for disability support.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where I was imagining. I don't know the benefit system well enough, and yeah, I mean, it might be able to pick some people's brains here about exactly how we should be framing this, but yeah. Oh, that's interesting, Natalie. Thank you. That applying for food grants is really overwhelming. It's the nature of the benefit system, isn't it? You've got to have the cognitive ability to navigate that. Unless you have people like yourself walking alongside.
Yeah, that touching story from Ness, when we opened. Yeah. And I actually made a note of that, that it's high needs I called them clients, but yeah, high needs people who need slow, gentle support. And it's a real, that kind of MSD welfare system is really sort of fast-paced and confronting. So yeah, just made me really kind of think about how, the advocacy that we can be doing.
Mm.
Looks like a question from Andrew, possibly. You still want to ask it, Andrew? So your hands up.
Was actually clapping, but I'll take the opportunity anyway. The point that Natalie raised about food grants, it's overlaps with the need to have a assigned case manager. I currently have a approximately 18-month battle to get anything more than gibberish out of the local MSD office. Otherwise, I have to go in and I have to try to give my life story in under 20 minutes. Now, up until recently, I was very good at rambling. That was my superpower. I couldn't jump tall buildings. I wasn't faster than the speeding bullet, but I could ramble like an Olympic athlete. It doesn't work with MSD. So I have, because of the basic culture of MSD, will often self-fund things. Wheelchair accessories, food, and dental care being the three top financial burdens. And it's the stigma is a major factor, but also the stress, the sleepless night, 1 or 2 nights before, and over winter at one point they assigned me a 9 a.m. Appointment time. They did not advise me option A and option B. They simply gave me option A. If you're shivering, that's fine. You can take your hoodie off 10 seconds after you're in the door. That's cruel and inhumane punishment, as our American lawyers like to call it. Sorry, I'm venting rather than asking a particular question. But again, I want to say I am so grateful for your professional work. It is something that's outside my capability to do right now, and I'm so grateful. I better be quiet now and let you.
But I said to Kaho this morning, I said, I feel a bit unprepared for this, but I said, I know we're going to be talking to people who are going to be interested and engaged. So that, yeah, thank you, Andrew, as well, and to everyone for your interest. There was just one more point I wanted to make, and when you introduced us, Patrick, at the beginning, then you said we were going to talk about the registry, and I feel really bad I didn't have a slide, but I'm quite happy to speak for a couple of minutes about that if that would be helpful.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get my wires crossed.
No. I think at one point we were going to, and then when I was talking with Michelle, then I decided not to because it's not a great story, but I'm very happy to share it with you. So for those of you who filled in the survey, then there was a link to identify that you would like to be part of an ME registry. So obviously the original survey was fully anonymous, and if you follow this link, then it took you to a place where you could put in contact details. And all of those people who did provide contact details, at least an email address, I will be sending our final report to again, which is something I'm in the process of writing. There weren't many. There was about 250 people who did, and for those people, I really appreciate the effort you went to and the fact you were happy to share your personal details. At the same time, I did a bit of work with stakeholders, so I talked to quite a few people, and in particular, Warren Tate was really concerned about releasing the idea of a registry where it clearly is vastly counting the number of people. We know that we should be talking tens of thousands of people in that registry. And his concern was that if we released anything like that, even if it was meant to just be the beginnings of something, that it could easily be used against the community as this isn't really something that we need to be concerned about. So we have to be really careful how we do, if we release anything, how we do. Clearly we'll release this to ANSMES who funded the work, and we'll send it out direct to all the people who did provide their details as well, and happy for it to be shared clearly among members of ME Support and other support groups. But I think that, yeah, that concern that it could be used against us, to me, was a really powerful argument. And but again, really, really happy to talk further if others think that we should be doing more in this area, or have a completely different approach.
What was the experience of long COVID Aotearoa? They have a registry. Did that work against them or for them?
I think it did work against them. They had just under 1,000 people, and I think it's even harder for long COVID because a lot of people have tried to estimate how common it is and failed. At least overseas, people have managed reasonably well to estimate how common ME is. And so using those, I think it was the UK results applied to the New Zealand population, they came up with a sort of 50 to 60,000. I think that was the number that came out earlier this year.
Right.
So yeah, so Leanne, oh thanks, Daniel, that's very kind of you. Yeah, I think that is the concern, that we're not that tiny, and we all know that. So Leanne suggests there a study on using primary care data. The problem with that is that it's not collated for the entire country. So we could do it for either for small areas where GP systems are talking to each other, or potentially for those using medtech, so where the patient management system is medtech. Those data are all collected and held by a company who kind of process the data. It doesn't touch the underdiagnosed or the non-diagnosed. So I know that, for example, I don't have a diagnosis on my record. My record says Mona says she was diagnosed in England. But my GP here refused to make that diagnosis or accept what I was telling him. So it would be a good start if it was feasible. The ministry are talking about this idea of having bringing together all the primary care data, but I think that's probably on hold with the big cuts to data and digital that's happened. But yeah, if you've any other ideas, Leanne, then really, or anyone, really, really interested, I would love to try to work out the real prevalence of ME in New Zealand. But I think it's just a very, very hard mountain to climb.
Thank you for your update on the register, and it's good to know we're in a safe pair of hands, not doing something which would be counterproductive to the community. I'm sure your hearts were set on setting up a register, but thinking about the community's needs, how it could backfire is really reassuring that you guys are considering those things. We're coming up to time, 12:30, sort of promised ends to the AGM time. Unless there's any other questions for Dr. Jeffries and Kahurangi, we'll start to close the meeting, I suppose. Give it the obligatory 7 seconds. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. Look, big heartfelt thank you to Dr. Jeffries and Kahurangi for taking time out of their day to come present to us, especially on the weekends. As you can hear from the comments and feedback, we are an underserved community, which and having some high caliber and local research is just like super important to us. It shows that somebody's shining a light on our plight, and we're not sort of here alone. And Kahurangi, I know you said you don't have a lived experience, but I hope you can see from the comments today what a difference your research is making. There's such a shortage of good quality research, and especially applied in the local context. And it's so good to have you guys flying a flag for us. And if you can convince 20 of your other colleagues to do similar papers for us, then we'll be in a good place in 10 years, but probably not from what I've heard. So thank you, big heartfelt thank you from everybody. So I had an update about the voting. All the resolutions are passed, so a big warm welcome to our new directors, Russell and Marie. I'll send you some onboarding information soon. But unless there's any other matters, I'm happy to close the meeting in a few seconds. I'll hang out after we close the meeting, just to answer anybody's questions if they wanted to chat, or any questions about charity as well. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending today. It's so good seeing passionate members of the community taking interest in the ME space and what we're doing. And I declare the meeting closed at 12:31 p.m. by my clock. You're welcome to leave or hang out and chat for a little bit. Thank you so much.